Welcome back to Top 5.
10. Princess Hashiheim. In the heart of ancient Kyoto, the air was thick with the scent of cherry blossoms, a soothing balm against the trials of life. But in a small household lived a man named Yamada-zaman Kunitoki who had cast a shadow over his own home. Consumed by selfish desires, he took a lovely concubine, casting aside the woman who had stood by him in times of strife, his devoted wife. As the moonlight spilled into her chamber, the wife, who had once known joy, began to wither like the last petals of autumn. Each night, her heart grew heavier with jealousy, rage, and despair, a torment that wrapped around her like a serpent. In her anguish, she ventured to a local shrine, her only solace. Kneeling in front of the deity, she prayed fervently, begging for strength to take vengeance on her faithless husband. The shrine priest, sensing the disturbance in her spirit, was drawn into her plight. After days of prayerful visions, he finally approached her, eyes filled with fear yet compassion. "You can become a vengeful demon," he said. "But the transformation will require sacrifices, the kind that tests one's very essence." In a trance-like state, she listened intently to the priest's instructions. The path was perilous. She must don a red kimono and dye her hair the color of blood, crowning herself with horns of fire. As the priest's words settled into her mind, she felt the bitter taste of anger shift within her. As instructed, she nestled herself by the banks of the Ujigawa River for 21 cold, torturous days and nights, each moment stretching her mind taut against the brewing storm of her rage. On the last night, the river swirled with an otherworldly glow, and her consciousness shifted, merging into the darkness that awaited. She transformed, becoming a demon whose very essence was vengeance. Meanwhile, Yamada-zaman was awakened by a haunting nightmare each night as the new moon rose, nightmares that pulled him into a swallowing abyss. After consulting an astrologer, he learned of his wife's impending return. "Beware, for a demon stirs in the shadows, yearning for vengeance. You must protect your home, or your days are numbered." Despite his preparation, when the demon form of his wife came for him, her beauty masked the horror hidden beneath. With a graceful movement, she knocked on the door, her voice a haunting melody. "Husband, let me in. It's been too long." Yamada-zaman's heart raced as dread poured into his veins. He remembered the prophet's words. He went about securing his home with talismans and barriers against her magic. When she finally arrived, he was ready. But the demon was relentless. She shifted shapes, luring innocent men and women with her sorrowful cries, a beautiful specter shrouded in eternal sadness. The entire city became entranced by her, unaware of the bloodlust that coursed through her veins. As chaos reigned, the emperor could no longer rest easy. Innocent lives were consumed as the demon wreaked havoc through the streets. She took on the guise of a beautiful woman, enchanting unsuspecting men into fits of longing before revealing her true nature, which sealed their fates in horror. Desperation filled the air, and the emperor decreed that the demon must be stopped. After days of searching, hunters fanned out across the countryside, their resolve strong. The demon, now known as Princess Hashi, was cornered. As she fatally entranced the last of her victims, she stood alone, rage and sorrow radiating from her. In a sacrificial act, she surrendered, her heart finally breaking under the weight of the grief she had sorrowfully wrought. "Let me have my final peace," she whispered into the night as she cast herself into the Ujigawa River, drowning beneath the current where she would be buried with her grief. In remorse, the emperor justified her request and decreed a grand funeral for the ghost he hoped would bring peace once again. Yet the specter continued to haunt the memories, her shrine built as a reminder of a love twisted into anguish. The stories of her beauty grew with time, transforming her into an enigma. Yet when one passed by the river, whispers of her sorrow could still be heard, echoing faintly into the night. 9. Blue Mask. In the mountains of Tochijai, where swirling mists mystified the land, a Templar warrior of great renown, Kyan, the Zen monk, traveled across the hills seeking refuge in an unfamiliar village. The villagers, whispering through chattering teeth, avoided him, their faces pale and filled with terror. They regarded him with suspicion as though he were a malevolent yokai. "Go back," one elder warned him, his voice trembling. "There's another monk residing on the mountain above us. He has turned to evil." "What is this dark tale?" questioned Kyan, intrepid and eager for stories. The elder gulped, his aged hands trembling. "The other monk lost his child, driven mad with grief. He consumed the boy's corpse and now haunts the temple as a starving demon, a man-eating yokai." Ignoring the villagers' warnings, Kyan made the ascent toward the temple, undaunted by superstition. Climbing the rocky path under the early evening glow, he felt the chill of the wind graze his skin, but his heart was resolute. He was determined to confront this dark illusion, armed with wisdom and compassion. Reaching the temple, the air thickened with darkness, and every shadow seemed alive. He entered, his footsteps purposeful. The interior was steeped in stillness, save for the distant echo of his breath. There, in the flickering candlelight, he saw the disheveled figure of the mad monk. With ashen skin and hollow eyes, the creature floated before Kyan, an array of tormented expressions flickering across its face. Before Kyan could even utter a word, the monk lunged, roaring with a demonic hunger. "You're here for dinner," he growled with excitement. The gaping maw revealed rotted teeth, his still lingering humanity marred by the insatiable hunger for flesh. Quicker than a lightning strike, Kyan evaded the fierce onslaught, his heart racing as fear threatened to swallow him whole. With deep breaths, he focused his energy, channeling his inner resolve. "Calm yourself. The child is gone. You must look for solace, not slaughter." The mad monk hesitated, confusion flooding his eyes. "Solace." His voice softened, filled with a sorrow drowned in an abyss of despair. With each passing moment, Kyan witnessed the glimmer of humanity flickering within him. "I bring you a gift," Kyan said, pulling from beneath his robe a beautifully crafted blue mask, a relic imbued with serene energies. "Wear this and recite this sutra, it will grant you rest." The wretched being stared at the mask as though it were a mythical sword that could slay his demons. With trembling hands, he accepted it and recited the words, but as the seasons passed, Kyan looked upon the monk through the veil of time. He returned to the mountain each winter to check on the monk. Yet, when he came back, he found the once mighty monk reduced to a mere sack of bones, paper skin stretched over countless regrets. A flicker of hope had extinguished within him, his body a shrine to a madness that had consumed him whole. Decrepit yet tethered to the mask, he continued to recite the sutra, shackled by an unseen bond. Kyan frowned deeply, his heart heavy with sorrow. Approaching the husk of the monk, he took the mask from the withered hands and thwacked him fiercely, a calculated strike that shattered the remaining sorrows into dust. The ashes scattered into the mountain winds. "Rest now," he murmured gently, feeling the spirit finally lift, set free. But the mask, imbued with memories, whispered to the mountains evermore, a lesson of compassion lost and found. The echo of the monk's fate uttered through local folklore, where his soul became a cautionary tale warning against yielding to despair. Each face that gazed upon the blue mask in the village was tinged with foreboding, a dark reminder that salvation comes with a price. 8. Ancient Tree. Deep within a dense forest where shadows danced in deference to the sunlight, the villagers of a nearby hamlet spoke in hushed tones about a tree, a wise, ancient sentinel that had witnessed the passage of countless seasons. The elder mist, the heart of the woods, reached an age of 1,000 years, said to house the spirits of the forest. Legends whispered that the tree could be benevolent or malevolent, depending on the intentions of those who approached. Among the villagers was a woodcutter named Musabi no Gen, skilled at his craft, yet heedless of the legends surrounding him. Day after day, he traversed the leafy pathways, but a hunger brewed within him, to fell the high ancient tree, to claim its wood for riches. One cool morning, spurred by ambition, Musabi set out with his tools in hand, determination coursing through him. Ignoring the warnings of the wise elders who implored him not to disturb the tree, he ascended the mountainside, guided by the intoxicating allure of the fabled wood. As he approached, the forest grew ominously quiet. The birds ceased their songs, and even the rustling of leaves suspended. The ancient tree loomed before him, its gnarled branches stretching skyward like twisted arms yearning for heaven. "Watch out. I am about to fall down." The voice echoed through the woods, a siren's warning born of desperation. Musabi paused, startled, scanning for the source, yet saw nothing but the mighty tree before him. Assuming it was merely the wind singing a sorrowful tune, he resumed his work. With every swing of his axe, he felt a jolt of excitement and a thrill of danger. But the old voice returned, pleading louder through the rustling breeze, "Watch out. I am about to fall down." The tone shifted from urgent to frantic, but Musabi remained undeterred, dismissing the warning. The sun dipped into twilight as the shadows lengthened, and he continued his relentless chopping. Finally, exhaustion filled his limbs. The night wrapped around him, clutching him with icy fingers. Ignoring the late hour, he persisted, aiming just one more strike. Suddenly, the tree began to shift and tremble as if alive, morphing before him. Eyes and a mouth emerged from its bark, glowing with an ethereal light. Musabi stood frozen in terror, realizing the foolishness of disregarding the legends. The tree was indeed alive and defensive, a guardian spirit awakened by his threat. "Foolish one," bellowed the ancient spirit, its voice reverberating through the air like distant thunder. "You sought to take what was never yours." With that, the tree uprooted its roots and surged toward him, ensnaring Musabi in a whirlwind of branches. The woodcutter struggled helplessly as the spirit pulled him into its depths, down into the dark, hidden world beneath the surface where the essence of the forest thrived. The following morning, the villagers ventured into the woods concerned for Musabi's absence. They found his tools scattered, abandoned at the base of the great tree. The foliage rustled ominously, and the once proud tree now stood silent, its surface stained red, remnants of Musabi's blood forever mingling with the earth. As seasons turned, the echoes of his screams became part of the forest's murmurs, a warning to those who dared approach the ancient tree. Its blossoms transformed from white to a permanent crimson, a testament to the perils of greed and the reverence nature commands. 7. Muddy Rice Field. In the quiet region of Okayama, legend spoke of an untended rice paddy that thrived with a lush bounty year after year. The villagers whispered about it, claiming water from that field was bottomless, inhabited by a yokai that feasted on its soil. No villager dared go near, knowing that untouched grounds birthed danger. Among those captivated by curiosity was a wandering monk whose days on the road often yielded colorful tales of wonder and ominous dread. He sought to test fate, intrigued by the simple paddy thriving amongst forsaken lands. Ignoring the warnings that echoed in his mind, he approached with an inquisitive heart, drawn by the resounding melody of a distant temple bell ringing eerily through the air. As he stepped closer, an unsettling chill enveloped him, yet he pressed on, driven by the magnetic pull. Suddenly, the ground shimmered, and from the depths of the field, a grotesque figure arose. Its form twisted and shifted, revealing the creature at the heart of the legends. The yokai, creeping from the murky depths, snatched at the monk before he could react. "Why have you come here, dear traveler?" it hissed, eyes blazing with a hunger that could consume worlds. "I wish only to understand," the monk replied, voice steady in the face of danger. But the yokai, unfazed by his words, dragged him deeper into the abyss, down toward the darkly glimmering waters that held many secrets. As panic pierced the monk's heart, he fought to maintain his wits. "What lies beneath?" he cried, clutching at the air swirling around them, and in that moment, the yokai's grim reward bore familiarity. "Here with me you shall dwell," it murmured, dragging him whirling and tumbling into the depths of the rice field. The warm color of the harvest slowly turned to an eerie blood-red hue, embracing the soil in a ghastly transformation. Days turned into weeks, but the villagers remained oblivious to the fate that had befallen the wandering monk. Yet, they now marked the paddy differently, speaking of the blood-red harvest that came year after year. The whispers morphed into warnings. When harvesters toiled in the fields, they noticed the crops withered away, while the unsown grew ripe alongside the desolation. In the dead of night, a figure entered their dreams, haunting their thoughts with the memory of the monk who had vanished. Villagers awakened in terror, especially after hearing stories of the fleeting laughter that slipped through the shadows as if sung by the rice itself. Their dreams turned darker, and the yokai's laughter filled the air, luring men and women alike to the cursed paddy with promises of riches abundant. Days turned to years, yet the legend continued to thrive, a testament to curious travelers who dared to disturb what should remain untouched. The rice field bloomed each season, its blood-hued harvest confirming the old tales, that the untamed earth held secrets far beyond comprehension, echoing the waltz of life and death intertwined, forever leading the curious into its depths. 6. Simple Dwelling. In the heart of Japan, nestled among landscapes rich with flora, was a small silk merchant's household. Katsuhiro, a diligent worker, had a sweetheart in his wife, Miyagi, whose beauty flourished amidst spring blooms. Each summer brought promises of prosperity and love. However, duty one day called him away to the capital of Kyoto for trade. With whispered promises and tender kisses, Katsuhiro reassured Miyagi, "When autumn leaves fall, I will return to you, and tell tales to delight your heart." But as days turned into weeks, and weeks morphed into months, silence enveloped their once vibrant household. As autumn's embrace wound around the village, Katsuhiro remained trapped in a city fraught with turmoil and unrest. He longed to return to his wife, yet days stretched into years. In the capital, chaos reigned as wars consumed the streets, every effort he made thwarted by political strife and dangers lurking around every corner. He clung desperately to letters he wrote but could never send. Back home, each woven thread of silk carried whispers of the past, but as Miyagi awaited, sorrow filled her heart. Time only deepened her resolve. She poured her worries into poetry that echoed her heartache, hoping each word of longing would call her husband back. "Where are you, dear love?" she lamented to the stars night after night, waiting patiently as each season passed. However, the winds carried away her hopes like dry leaves blown on a restless breeze. She fought away eager suitors, her heart loyal, yet the echoes of loneliness grew deafening. 7 long years passed before fortune smiled upon Katsuhiro, allowing his escape from the chaos that bound him. With newfound resolve and an ache for his beloved, he traversed the mountains, rushing back through the familiar landscape. At last, he reached the threshold of home, a quiet echo of the vibrant past he once knew. However, upon his arrival, the household stood eerily silent. Katsuhiro's heart raced as he called out for his wife, named longingly in the stillness. Only shadows answered. A local beggar wandered by, noticing Katsuhiro's turmoil. "You have returned but found her no more," the beggar whispered gently, sorrow mingling with the cool air. "She passed, waiting for you, dear sir." Grief crushed Katsuhiro's heart as he stumbled through the empty hallway. In disbelief, he navigated the memories of smiles and laughter trapped within the walls. It was then he felt a gentle touch, a whisper on the wind, "I await you still." That night, as the first wood smoke curled into the sky, Katsuhiro fell into a restless slumber, tormented with visions of his beloved. She appeared, radiant yet translucent, standing in the moonlight, promising never to abandon him. "I have waited for you, my one true love," she said softly, her words resonating through the air. He reached out, but the morning light scattered her image away, leaving him filled with despair rather than joy. He discovered that Miyagi had transcended beyond the realm of the living, her spirit staying loyal to their promise. Every night, as slumber cast its gentle veil, he would feel her presence. Though ephemeral, it provided solace. Each following dusk, Katsuhiro waited, yearning for the night to share stories of their lives. And though he dedicated himself to honoring her memory, he awoke each dawn alone, his heart heavy. The villagers often whispered of the melancholy romance, a tale turned legend as Katsuhiro's spirit merged with the spectral essence of his beloved, the two forever fading and joining within the tender threads of silk. Years later, the small home fell to ruin, and the echoes of their unwavering love became entwined with tales sung by wandering bards. The house remained untouched, an emblem of boundless love and the haunting absence that lingered in the hearts of those who once welcomed the couple into their community. 5. Shadow Woman. On the outskirts of a quiet village, a humble man named Sakub lived a simple life shrouded in routine. Mountains framed his existence, twining the paths he often walked. But beneath the placid surface of his days lingered unspoken shadows, reminiscent of ancient myths escaping the village. One evening, as darkness faded into the night, Sakub heard a soft knock echoing from his door, causing his heart to race. Under the cloak of moonlight stood a woman shrouded in mystery, cradling a babe against her bosom. "Please, let us in. I have nowhere to go on this cold night, my child is freezing," she pleaded, her voice trembling whilst winds whirled through the trees. Compassion welled in Sakub's heart as he sensed a desperation in her plea and cracked the door open, welcoming them into his home. The woman appeared haggard, her features obscured by the cooling darkness, but he felt compelled to offer shelter regardless. Once inside, the weight of her presence filled the room like an unseen cloak. The warmth of the hearth illuminated their surroundings, casting flickering shadows across the walls. As Sakub unslung the baby from the mother's arms, something terrible happened. The woman began to shift and fade, her body dissolving into shadow. Panic seized him, and joy turned to horror as the babe transformed at his feet, a twisted creature, now covered in dark fur and sporting sharp fangs. Shock forced Sakub to drop the infant in horror. It vanished as abruptly as the woman had, leaving the once hospitable atmosphere laden with dread. Each consequent night, the Shadow Woman returned, repeating the same beguiling ritual as her cries tugged at the fraying edges of his sanity. "Let me in," her voice became a haunting refrain that turned into an omnipresent echo within his mind, leaving him sleep-deprived and cornered in his own home. Sakub, driven to despair, began to witness shadows move on their own and confusing whispers slip through the crumbling walls as if the home itself united with the specters, growing tainted by dreams haunted by her presence. The sun rose each morning with Sakub weary and frayed. Days blurred, and as he fought against slumber, the specter continued her relentless calls, nursing her darkness with ravenous appetite. Each knock at the door felt like the epic of nightmares grinding down upon him, until madness seeped into his veins. Eventually, the inevitable succumbed to despair as the culmination of pressure forced him to flee his home. He left behind the hearth, their warmth buried under shadows, and the memories entwined within its lonely walls. The specter's cries echoed in the air, dragging his sanity into obscurity as he disappeared into the night, never to be seen again. As it is told, some say that shadows still drift aimlessly around that house, waiting for someone to return and unlock the door, a legacy of unfulfilled desire shackled to pain. The Shadow Woman remains a haunting remnant of the fates interlinked, forever lost in the echoes of the night. 4. The Eyes. Long ago, in a distant village, there stood a temple, Mokurenji, abandoned yet thick with the scent of the past. The winds whispered secrets of the abandoned halls. Children spun tales by the fire, urging braver souls to venture inside, daring one another to spend the night at the haunted Mokurenji. Survive a night there, and you'll be blessed with riches, they would say mischievously. When autumn barreled through like a tempestuous spirit, a traveling peddler named Yoshimaru heard the stories during a local festival. Each tale captured his imagination, the promise of beauty and treasure intrigued him, waking a spark of insatiable curiosity in his heart. Fueled by sake and youthful bravado, he sought the thrill of adventure and placed a bet against the villagers. He would last a single night inside Mokurenji. Best of luck, the villagers called out with jest as he entered the temple, the creaks of wood accompanying his defiant step. The tranquility inside contrasted sharply with the cacophony outside. He lit a candle and made himself comfortable, intoxicated with the notion of glory. As the night unfurled, shadows danced along the walls, coaxing the candlelight into flickering shapes. But soon, the air shifted, becoming dense and heavy. As the night deepened into silence, Hirako, an ancient spirit known as the Mokimokuren, awoke. Uncountable eyes peeked from the splintered walls and old shoji screens, clouded by years of neglect. The intensity of their stares trapped Yoshimaru in a hypnotic thrall. As he lay sprawled on the wooden floor, unease curled within him. A faint whisper rushed through the temple, a sinister chorus, the eyes blinking in a twisted rhythm. The disembodied voices merged, echoing through his mind, centering on one word, eyes. In utter pandemonium, Yoshimaru leaped to his feet, stumbling backwards against the wall as waves of terror crashed down upon him. "What do you want?" he shrieked, thrashing against the constraining shadows. The chorus grew louder, swirling around him with fervor, the eyes. The eyes. What seemed like hundreds of eyes began to blink and shift towards him, confusion clouded his senses with dread. Desperately, he rushed towards the exit, but the door slammed shut, imprisoning him within the walls of horror. All night, the villagers remained outside, swallowing their anticipation with occasional jests, unaware of the wails echoing from within. Underneath their jocular humor was a smoldering fear: could any man truly survive? Only a cacophony of screams shattered the night as dawn's first light seeped through the cracks. When the sun rose, the villagers opened the door to the temple, gasp after gasp escaping their lips. Littered across the ground lay only remnants of Yoshimaru. A blood-soaked rag, scraps of cloth caught amid the uneasiness, and a pair of empty eyes in the shadows, transformed into haunting memory. The legend spread like wildfire through the village, forever haunting the unyielding space known as Mokurenji. The temple was whispered about for generations, as the eyes continued to haunt the unwary, seeking new victims stolen by the vortex of fear and darkness. 3. Chrysanthemum Promise. The bonds of friendship and loyalty intertwined as Sanman, a devout monk, and Soyenman, a military scholar, formed a brotherhood against the backdrop of tumultuous times. Together, they explored the mysteries of life, sharing laughter and dreams, but the shadows of fate were never far behind. One day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Soyenman received word of an urgent matter calling him home. They embraced, their friendship unbreakable. "I shall return as soon as the season turns," he promised. But time flowed differently in volatile times, as Soyenman was tangled in a web of treachery. Seasons changed, and days turned to months, yet there was no sign of Soyenman's return. Growing alarmed intensely, Sanman prayed fervently for his friend's safety. As the days grew longer, an urgent message reached Sanman: Soyenman had been wrongfully imprisoned by his cousin, ensnared by betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. Devastated by the news, Sanman vowed to bring his friend justice. Disguised as a traveler, he ventured forth to the town where he learned of his cousin's crimes. Hidden in the shadows, he watched as the illegitimate heir reveled in the power he had usurped. Time slipped through Sanman's fingers as grief consumed him. In a moment of unfathomable rage, he confronted the cousin. Words turned into swift action, the bonds of friendship amplifying vengeance. As darkness fell, he claimed his cousin's life, sealing his fate and spilling blood upon the earth. But revenge came at a price. That night, in a twist of fate, Soyunman's spirit appeared before Sandman, ethereal yet heavy with sorrow. I have come to share my story, my cousin's treachery imprisoned me, and in this despair, my spirit was lost. I took my own life to return to you, a sacrifice for our bond. A pang cut through Sandman's heart, lost amid loyalty, framed by the allure of love that went unspoken. You have my gratitude, dear friend, Soyunman said, a surreal glow surrounding him. But now, your own soul is entwined in sorrow. I implore you, seek peace. In those final moments, they shared an understanding, both ethereal yet poignant. Then, like a fleeting gust, Soyunman faded into the night, leaving Sandman alone in the silence wrought from despair. Days stretched into years, but nothing filled the void left behind. Sandman wandered, heartsick, surviving as an echo of the love he lost. His heart heavy with grief, he faded from the village, never seen again, his story whispered through time, a tragic ballad of sorrow and unquenched love. 2. The Old Mountain Woman. In a quaint village and at the foot of a formidable mountain, tales of fear danced among families regarding a notorious creature that lurked in the nearby woods. This woman, known as the Old Mountain Woman, transformed from an ordinary villager gone mad into a howling ogre that devoured young children and preyed upon those too curious for their own good. One fateful day, a loving mother entrusted her 3 sons with a warning before exploring the mountainside. Whatever you do, keep the door shut. Do not let anyone in, especially not the Old Mountain Woman. As darkness fell, the promise of safety resided in the laps of her 3 children. They gathered close together inside as the moon cast shadows dancing across the floor. But as the night wore on, a voice carried through the stillness, calling sweetly from beyond the door. Who's there? The eldest son inquired cautiously, his intrigue battling with trepidation. I am your neighbor, come to help. There's danger abroad, and I'm cold, replied a soft, ragged voice. His instincts kicked in, and he refused to open the door. That night, the chilling whispers became sighs and murmurs, echoes twisting through the darkness. With each attempted plea from outside, the boys clung to each other, unwavering in their trust. The next night brought another plea, this time, the youngest son heard. Who's there? He called softly, curiosity glimmering in his eyes. I am a friend of your mother's, here to deliver a message. It's urgent. You must let me in. He hesitated for a moment, but he was resolute in his intent to see. Show me your hand, he stuttered, breath hitching as shadows danced. As the hand appeared through the small crack, he caught sight of coarse, brush-like fingers that made his heart race in fear. I cannot open the door, he said, pulling back, feeling a shiver coil around him. A final, desperate knock echoed through the night, accompanied by a voice softer yet filled with urgency. The middle son, instigated by a mix of bravado and danger, decided it was time to confront the voice. Who's there? What do you want? He demanded. It's your mother. I've come home. The voice was unrecognizable yet alluringly sweet. When he asked to see her hand through the crack, a gentle hand, delicate like the first petals of spring, caught his attention. Entranced, the middle son flung open the door, drawn into a snare as the Old Mountain Woman filled the doorway, her features shifting between beauty and horror, closing around him. With a gluttonous laugh, she snatched him away into the night, devouring him without hesitation. The panic-stricken brothers, now left alone, joined together with dread, gathering stones before climbing high into a nearby tree in an attempt to escape her wrath. As the old travel-grown women searched, she crept through the woods calling for the remaining boys. Once she approached the tree, they rained stones down upon her head in fury and terror. Despite the force, she stumbled and fell, crashing into the ground. Her cries became twisted wails as the roots drank from her blood, melding her essence to the earth, leaving a deep bond forged in pain. The brothers clung to hope and watched as villagers gathered pieces of the old woman's malice, forever memorializing her warning that would preserve the safety of the future generations. They grew into adults, with their tale entwined in the folklore of the village, a caution against deception and bravery in overwhelming fear. 1. Parlor Children, Zashiki Warashi. In the remote corners of Japan's Tohoku region, the specter of abandoned children shadows the landscape. Tales of Zashiki Warashi echo through homes, each a soul left neglected, seeking warmth in a world of indifference. Originating from families too impoverished to care for them, these spirits haunt their forsaken surroundings, slipping between realms in sorrow and despair. Once, in a humble village near Iwate, there lived a kind-hearted man named Masaiman, well respected for his fervent kindness. He owned a small but prosperous farm, thriving alongside his wife and children. But fate, enshrined in a quirk of destiny, was not without cruelty. One day, a traveling monk came to his door, eyes weary and sage experience etched upon his brow. "Beware, Masaiman," the monk warned, a chill in his voice. "You will soon find yourself without fortune, your family caught in relentless ruin." The words wrapped around Masaiman's heart like a viper, fear pierced through his chest. Feeling dread seep into his bones, Masaiman found himself bedridden, consumed by the burden of despair. Whispers filled the air, and laughter echoed from the halls, the innocent yet sorrowful sounds of children running and playing in fields of long-lost dreams. Suddenly, he began hearing swift footsteps overhead, those of children, persistent and nimble in playful glee, but underneath lay something haunting, an abyss of mourning. "Are you dead? Are you dead?" the chorus inquired, drifting from the wounded shadows, sending chills spiraling through the fabric of the room. Dripping water cascaded down upon his head, and yet even its chill could not compare to the compounding dread in his heart. When the apparition emerged, it brought with it an overwhelming tide of bitter cold. Soaking wet from an ethereal stream, the ghost child looked upon Masaiman, who fell into a fit of shock, wagging to silence. With the shoji screens thrumming at disjointed intervals and laughter swirling in the air, a cascade of cries followed, resonating deeper in Masaiman. "Are you dead? Are you dead?" Afraid yet entranced, he succumbed to the storm of truths he could no longer ignore. That night, he lay in anguish, fighting against the currents rising beneath his blindly hopeful heart. Heartbeats echoed as daggers prompting him into a churn of madness, and he allowed the anguish to envelop him completely. The whispers turned feral, and the laughter became cries that pierced through the folds of despair. His breath quickened, and in sheer panic, Masaiman succumbed to an eternity of fear, collapsing lifelessly onto the floor, the last echoes of laughter ripped from existence as the walls echoed their silence. Once the news of his death spread, the darkness pervaded the village and beyond. Masaiman's family, finding no one willing to purchase their home steeped in loss, saw their fortunes fade into nothingness. The family slowly fell into decay. The Zashiki Warashi haunted the premises, forever locked in warm embraces of laughter now twisted into growths of sorrow. Zashiki Warashi claimed their dominion, forever swirling through the realms of existence, ensuring history would never forget how neglect and abandonment could brand a spirit for eternity. In the stillness of that home, children's laughter faded into whispers, forever echoing through the village, a reminder of the peril of forsaken promises, the souls of children watching in the silence, waiting, longing for the warmth of love that had long escaped them. Their stories would linger, a shadowed reverie, warning those who entered the home to heed their gentle knocks and soft cries, always remembering the fragile weight of responsibility that rested in hands unprepared for love, a gentle reminder of light lost in the shadows of night.
In a faded dream where the shadows play, I'm drifting through the night, chasing ghosts away.